Hello everyone, I'm Sredna and welcome back to another video. So for those who haven't watched my previous videos, I'm an artist and I do a lot of nature and fantasy inspired works. I use a lot of watercolors and acrylics and occasionally some mixed media in there, and I have this YouTube channel to show my journey as an artist, to show what it's like, and also to share like my painting processes and things I've learned along the way with others. And so for today's video, I thought it'd be nice to do sort of like vlog style and just let everyone know what I've been up to while also filming the process of me packaging my newest watercolors. So these are handmade watercolors that I started making months ago now. I don't even remember like the exact date, but I had started making them in as like a response to just being out of them pretty frequently, and then I would go and buy them and like repurchase them a lot. So at some point, just like with any other kind of craft or activity, I just like looked into, oh, how do I do this? And I'm just a very crafty person in general. I love making things with my hands. And so I make just like for my own personal happiness and stuff, like make like candles and bath bombs and that kind of stuff. And I've just tried lots of stuff over the years. And some stuff has stuck and some stuff I'm like, no, I don't think I'd probably do that again. Like I almost got into when I was doing jewelry making, and I had like bought this whole kit because I just get so excited by the idea. So I'm like, oh, I'll get everything that I need in this kit. So I got this electro gold plating kit, I think is what it was called, and or maybe electroplating style, where like there's all these like chemicals and then you have to put something on your gem that you get, and then you put something on the ring, and then when you put them in this mixture, then they'll, I don't know, it'll get covered in gold or silver or whatever metal you end up using. And I I got the whole kit. I looked into the whole process and then I just like gave it away at some point. So yes, I've definitely dipped my hands into all these various things. But yeah, just for the love of making things. So for these watercolors, I just like, I was like painting so much and have lots of painting videos you can watch of different things that I've painted over the years. And I was just like rebuying them. And then at some point I was like, you know what? I wonder how these are made. Like, let me look into that. And there is very few information, I think, for how to make watercolors. Like I couldn't even really find like many books on it. And compared to like when you're cooking or you're making some sort of like recipe, like there's tons of stuff for that. Like people are like, oh, here's how I make this bread. Here's how I make this pizza or pasta. And I don't know why I'm only saying Italian foods, but they're delicious though. So, but you know what I mean? Like you can find readily available cookbooks for like any kind of recipe you would want. And with watercolors, it just wasn't that way. So it took a while and it took like a bit of research, but I eventually found like what I needed to. And I think why it's so secretive is that it's still relatively new. Like with, I'm trying to think like, I guess like food recipes that, you know, like as long as humans have been around, we've been exchanging this kind of information. Like as far as sort of like making watercolors and like selling it to people, like this is a very new thing. Like I think just within the last 100 years or so, people have really started to like whatever they make to sort of market it to people. So I looked into the history a bit and I've seen that, I mean, artists have been using all kinds of mediums and colors to make art for thousands of years since we had art. I mean, lots of cave wall paintings will show that to you. And just, you know, those like very rudimentary, like, oh, there's this one tone, like maybe like this deep red on this cave wall. And then, you know, this almost like stick figure like drawing. And I mean that those are the origins. Like people used what they had around them. So a lot of the times that was like clay or things they might find around like mountains or like bodies of water, and then like breaking those up, mixing it with water, and creating some drawings and being able to express themselves with that. So with modern day, the marketing like towards colors, so I guess what it looked like to me from some of the research I've done is that companies making watercolors that are available for everyone to use is a relatively new thing in comparison to the entire human experience. So usually it looks like what has happened is that artists would go out, they would gather ingredients, and then they would make their paints. So how do you make watercolor paints versus how you make like acrylic paints or oil paints or tempera or pastels? Like all of these are pretty similar processes. Like you need a pigment and then you need a binder, just something that will mix the pigment together so that it will last a long time. And okay, my cat is scratching my carpet, so I'm just gonna go grab her and then I will be right back. Were you scratching? Were you scratching the rug? Was that you? I saw her doing it right here. I was trying to record and sit down over here my video, but because we're in the middle of packing, all this stuff is out. And she saw this was an opportune moment to use this as her new scratching post. Is that what you thought? Okay, I'm gonna kick you out now. There you go. You can leave. She's happy to be out too. So I can get back to the video. Okay, I just got back from kicking my cat out. And where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about like all these different kinds of paint. So they're all like very similar, as in they need some sort of base. So like for oil paints, we would say, it's like an oil, might be linseed oil is like a very common thing, like base. And tempera, we would use like an egg base, and watercolors would be a water base. And so like the bases can be, a bit different, but like the pigment part, which is just the part that gives it a distinct color, is really the same, like whatever kind of paint you're making. So, and like pigments, we've always used them either from nature or lab created. So, I mean, you can go outside, you can peel bark off of a tree, you can grind it up, you can get some sort of color from that. You could go to a field of sunflowers, you could dry the petals and grind them up and get some sort of color from that. You can, I don't know, get like clay near like a river, like you might get a like a burnt sienna color from that like, or a raw sienna. And just so like a lot of these colors just mimic the ones that we see day to day, because I mean that's where we're using them from. And then like as time went on, like scientists and chemists were able to very smartly come up with these color combinations that maybe we couldn't get from the world around us, or maybe just not as easily. For example, there's this color that's like a purple. I know they get it from like this, it's like a purple color, and they get it from this kind of snail. And it's a very like luxurious color because it was just such a time intensive process to get it from. And I'm looking it up now. Oh, okay. It's called Tyrian purple. It's also known as royal purple or imperial purple. And it comes from Lebanon, and it's secreted, it says, by a species of sea snails. So this is the term. I mean, we've all heard of this, like this royal purple, like this very extravagant color. Well, it's because they were doing this very long process to extract them from snails. So yeah, it was like very laborious, very time intensive. So when chemists were able to come up with formulas and ingredients and were able to test out different reactions and see that like, okay, we can create these colors, but without necessarily, taking them from nature or having to like harm animals to get them. Like, so then we went this other route. So that's why I would say like a lot of the colors that I make are either, I guess you could say like organic, like they do like come from nature, or they're lab created, because maybe I don't want to get like 100 snails to get 1 gram of pigment or whatever it is. But I mean, that's like where the color comes from. And so then when you combine the color with whatever sort of base you want, then you make the color. And now how you make each color, I can see why those are a bit secretive, because like everyone has their own formula, much like recipes. But also like a lot of people have made recipe books to kind of, be like, oh, here's how I make this recipe. But I will say that likely if you have like a restaurant and you're known for making certain dishes, I don't know that you would, or it maybe is like a local business or like a smaller business. I don't know that you would also have a cookbook that details exactly how you make all of your recipes, because you do want customers to come to you for that. So it's like that's, what sets you, apart. Although I guess you could make money off a book, but it just depends on like what kind of business you are. Like there's an amazing, and I just keep using cookbooks because I think that's like a just really easy reference to kind of relate to. There's one called like Nadia Eats, and she was the winner of the Great British Baking Show, and I just loved her to death. And I got her cookbook, and I just so appreciated her sharing these recipes, and I've been able to make them and share them with my family and friends, and they're just so delicious. And mwah, so shout out to her. And but I can see like for her how she has, like that's like her thing. She's like, oh, like that's, I don't even, yeah, I'm like wondering, I don't know if she like runs a business per se, but I guess she kind of does, because now she has cookbooks, or she does like all sorts of things. So I don't know exactly that she has like one thing, but she has like many things. So she, is in that place where she can like let everybody know like all these recipes and all these ingredients and stuff like that. But then like there's these other businesses who like we're like relatively small. I mean, if you think about like how many people like make paints, or how many people make like watercolors, or like every brand, like what they're known for, it's not like we have like thousands to choose from like we do for food. Like there's just not that many. And so everybody just like very secretly and closely guards their recipes like with their life. Like I've tried looking up what different things do or whatever, but what will happen is like they give you like a basic ingredient. They're like, hey, use about this much pigment, and then use about this much binder. And then whatever you use as your binder is up to you. Like there's like some ingredients about, like for example, with watercolors, binders consist of water for sure, and usually like a distilled water, so like a very pure, doesn't have any bacteria or whatever other growth with it. And then there's like something to keep it like longer lasting, so sometimes people use ox gall, or sometimes essential oils. And I mean there's other things you can substitute for that as well, as just like a preservative. And then also you can like add different scents to it if you want yours to have any kind. That's perfectly safe. And then of course you have like your pigment. And then so before they didn't really like use like honey as much, but then like at some point people kind of jumped on the bandwagon and were like, oh, honey, it provides this sort of like moisturizing feel to our watercolors, and they kind of get this little bit of like stickiness, and they're able to like re-wet a bit easier. So before people were widely using honey, the cake pan itself would just sort of like dry out, and it would like be very dry and like very like cracked and stuff, and you'd have to put like a ton of water on it to rehydrate it. And but nowadays, since a lot of people do use some sort of honey or even like vegetable glycerin in their ingredients, it allows it to not get like as dry. But that is why you find in a lot of I'm trying to think, like when you get those really like cheap watercolors that come in those usually they come in like circular discs, and they're like super like dry and stuff, and you have to like like you put some water, you go to paint, and then they dry like very easily. It's likely that those ones like don't use as much honey as like the more handmade ones, or like the ones like Daniel Smith or what's another one? Or like Da Vinci or like something like that. So you can kind of tell like over time, like maybe about how much ingredients each company might have, or like, you know, what stuff people use or not. But it really just comes down to like what your purpose is when you're painting and like what you like. And I think for when you're starting out or you're beginning in your watercolor journey or your paint journey, whatever that is, it's totally fine to just use like whatever's like the cheapest, whatever's available. And then once you kind of get the hang of it, then you'll understand your preferences more. So I think that's what happened with me, because I had used like all these different kinds of brands and painted like so much. And then at, you know, some point I was like, oh, okay, I kind of know what I like in a watercolor, and I know, you know, like how I use it better. And so when I'm going to shop for them, I know what I'm looking for a bit more. And then when I started like making them, I was like, okay, this turned from like, oh, this is something fun to do like occasionally to, oh, okay, this is something that I would like to have, you know, for other people as well to use, because like I'm really loving these. And so, yeah, currently like this is what I'm trying to kind of turn all the colors that I have used before into like handmade lines. But of course that takes so long, because so at first I thought, oh, these watercolors don't take very long, maybe like, I know, a couple weeks. But then as time has gone up, as time has gone on, I've seen that actually, depending on the color, like some dry faster than others, some like need a bit more time. Sometimes they need like mulling and like mixing a bit longer, and some ones are shorter. And so like, I think like, yeah, around now I'm around like 1 to 2 months, depending on like which color I'm making. So it's like a lot of experimenting and stuff, and that's for each color. So although my goal in the beginning was like, let me convert all my like 100 watercolors into handmade, I'm like, oh my God, that would take so long. So I'm just like very slowly just going through like colors and just enjoying it and having fun making it. Because I always, oh my gosh, I love color. I mean, I'm sure you can tell that from all the things I painted. Like they're usually very vibrant and very colorful. And so just playing around with colors, coming up with new colors, trying to mix certain colors, seeing the different variations each one brings. It is just such a fulfilling process for me. And so when I was looking into making watercolors for people, I looked around at like some other brands and like how were they kind of like packaging or marketing their watercolors. And that's where I got the idea to do these cute little packaging. And I like that they're very like open. Like at first I was going to put foil on the watercolors, but then after a while I saw that like it's better for them to breathe, because they do need to like be like very like dried out and stuff, so that they are able to travel long distances and be packaged and things like that. And it's better for them overall, because it's just, I don't know, it's just things you learn along the way, I guess. So that is where I am in the watercolor journey. So thank you very much for watching along this video and listening to me talk about all things watercolor and paint making and all of that. And I hope that you will check out my website, where I have this color that I'm packaging here, lemon yellow. So thanks again, guys, and I hope you have a great day and week ahead. See you next time. Bye.